I just received my paycheck and I want to show you the 7 steps that I do when I get paid. Because there was a time early in my career where I went out for shopping every now and then, and at some point I wondered, where did all my money go? Now I still go out shopping every now and then, but with those steps I'm about to share with you, I found a way to maximize my money and still have something left for handbags and jewelry and travel. So if you're anything like me and you like to enjoy your life, but you also want to build wealth, then keep watching. I'm Sophia. I have learned about personal finance and investing for more than a decade, and I also love to talk about money. So let's start with step number 1, and that is look at leftovers. So the first thing I do when I get paid is I look at the account balance that I had before the salary arrived. In my case, for reasons I don't fully understand, it was $2,500. Now I know that this is money that I did not need in the past month because I already know that all of my costs were covered. And now what I want to do with the old unused money, I want to put it to work because I know when I have a lot of money in my checking account, I will be tempted to spend it. So I keep $500 in my checking account because I like to have a little buffer. Sometimes I keep even less than that, like $100. Now, if a bank balance of $100 seems too low for you, of course, you can choose whatever you're comfortable with, like $200, $500, $1,000. And there are 2 reasons why I'm moving that money. The first one is I want to create scarcity in my checking account. So scarcity in this case means to have only very little money in my checking account, because that way I'm like tricking my brain into thinking that I don't have any money to spend. Because spending really, it sneaks up on you. Winter sale here, a new pair of shoes there, and of course trying those 5 new restaurants that popped up in your city. And if we don't pay attention, money goes quickly. And the second reason I'm moving that money is because it doesn't earn any interest in my checking account, or only very little, like 0.0 something. And where I move this money to, and this is also step number 2, is I put it into a high yield savings account, because there the money earns interest. Now at the moment, although they already have lowered the key interest rates again, unfortunately, but you can still get 3% or more on a high yield savings account depending on the country you live in. So for dollars, you can still get an interest rate of up to 5%. For euros at the moment, it's rather the 2 to 3% mark, but everything is better than 0 or close to 0. And now the purpose of that money in the high yield savings account is to build an emergency fund. My emergency fund is not fully funded at the moment. That's why I'm transferring the leftovers to that high yield savings account. And I do not just transfer my leftovers there. I also transfer a fixed savings rate from my checking account to my high yield savings account. So that means a fixed percentage of my income goes into my high yield savings account. And that money leaves per recurring transfer right after I receive my income. But I will get to that later. Now, my emergency fund goal is to have 12 months of living expenses in cash. Many sources out there recommend 3 to 6 months. I say 3 months is too little because the emergency fund is for emergencies like losing your job, getting ill, or having to pay for unexpected expenses. And in situations like this that are already unpleasant, to have only money for 3 months can cause stress. The way I see it, we don't want to add more stress by worrying about money to that already stressful situation. So I recommend at least 6 months. By the way, I already have a video on my channel where I go into detail about the emergency fund. It's linked up here. I personally like to be on the safe and free side. That's why I chose 12 months for myself. So my leftover money as well as my fixed savings rate go to that high yield savings account with my emergency fund until this one is filled up. Now, just in case you are in debt, step number 3 is pay off your debt. Because pretty much the only way for you to get an instant and guaranteed 10+% return is by getting rid of your debt, because that's what you pay in interest for just having that debt. So you pay that off, and I wouldn't even say next. In the case you have debt, I would recommend to split your savings rate in half. And then with 50%, you build up your emergency fund, and with the other 50%, you pay off your debt. Yes, that does take you longer to achieve both goals, building an emergency fund and paying off your debt. But liquidity is important, especially to not get into debt further. And getting rid of your debt is also important because the interest you pay on your loans is like a leak in your boat that is supposed to bring you to the island of wealth. And if you don't pay off that debt as quickly as possible, you might never get there. Or at least it will be much harder to get there. Now, there are 2.5 different ways to pay off your debt. You might have heard of them. It's the avalanche method or the snowball method. Let's start with the avalanche method. It's when you pick the loan with the highest interest rate first. Now, mathematically, this is the best version to get rid of your debt. Because the higher the interest rate of your loans, the more you have to pay. And the more quickly you get rid of them, the better. But in case the loan with the highest interest rate is also the one with maybe the highest balance, or at least a pretty high balance, then this can be psychologically draining. Because you keep putting money towards your debt, but the actual number of your loans doesn't change that quickly. That's because the second method is the snowball method, and there you start with the loan with the lowest balance. Now, mathematically, this is not ideal, because you might hold on to the loans with the higher interest rates for longer than you need to. And then the interest you have to pay on them keeps adding up. But psychologically, the snowball method is better because it's rewarding. You pay off the first loan, which is going to go rather quickly, and then you build that momentum easier to get rid of the other loans as well. And the half method I was talking about is simply a combination of those two. So instead of just choosing one or the other, you can combine them. For example, pick the 3 ones with the highest interest rate, and of those 3, pick the one with the lowest balance. Or alternatively, pick the 3 ones with the lowest balance, and of those, you pick the one with the highest interest rate. And now let's continue with step number 4, which is invest. So once your debt is paid off and your emergency fund is filled up, you don't stop what you've saved to get there. So to reach those 2 goals of paying off debt and building the emergency fund. And that is very important. So you take that same money that you used for the emergency fund and for the debt, and now you redirect it to an investment account. That's exactly what I did before I had to tap in the emergency fund. So the savings rate and the leftovers went into my investment accounts. Because that is what will make us rich long term. And the sooner you start, the better. The more you have compound interest working in your favor. So with which investment account you start investing depends on the conditions in your country. If there are available, I would start with a pre-tax retirement account. Because that way money gets invested for your retirement from your gross income. So if there are any employer matches programs in your country, like the 401k in the US, and your employer matches a certain percentage of your income, start with this because there's 2 advantages. The first one is it's free money when your employer matches what you put in, and it reduces your taxable income. So for example, instead of paying taxes on 100,000, you only pay taxes on, 90,000 or 90 something thousand. Of course, I still recommend to read the conditions very carefully, because with tax advantaged accounts, there are usually strings attached. May this be that you have to be below a certain threshold of income, or that you have to pay penalties if you want to pull that money out before a certain age. So check those conditions first and then decide. And then once you've got the pre-tax retirement account covered, then you continue with an after-tax account. In the US, this is the Roth IRA. In the UK, it's different types of ISAs. In Germany, there is no such thing. There's only the Freistellungsauftrag. And those after-tax accounts also come with conditions. For example, they're usually capped. You only can put a certain amount per year in those accounts. So again, check the conditions and then decide if you want to go for it. So let's say, for example, the maximum that you can invest within a year in an after-tax investment account is 8,000. You fill that up until it's full, and then afterwards you redirect that money again into a taxable investment account. So this is like the normal brokerage account. And then you invest that money and let it work for you. If you don't know what to invest in, I'll link a video on my own investment strategy up here. And then my step number 5 is I put money into my fun account. Now, because we also want to enjoy our life and treat ourselves to something once in a while, we also put, at least I also put money into my fun account. Yes, I have a separate account just for fun. Or to be more accurate, it's a sub-account from my checking account. And every month I transfer money there just for purchases that I enjoy. By the way, this is the perfect time to look at your expenses and distinguish between wants and needs. Needs is essential spending on housing, groceries, transportation, and utilities. And wants is all the stuff that's fun. So going out to restaurants, shopping for clothes and accessories, traveling, or hobbies that you have. And usually there's at least one category where you spend more money than on other stuff. For me personally, it's spending on luxury items like handbags and clothes and jewelry. And it's also travel. That's why my fun account is split in half. Because that way I have money for both things separately. If you're not sure what it is for you, to figure this out, I have used an Excel sheet in the past decade where I track all of my expenses, and this Excel sheet already has different categories. So you can see at a glance where you spend much of your money and also how much percent that is of your income and also of your total expenses. If you want to check it out, it's completely free, a link down below. Now, why am I doing this, the fun account? There's again 2 reasons. Number 1 is I very intentionally put money away for things that I enjoy and that are only for spending. That's why I don't even call this saving, because it's not for saving, it's for spending. And the second thing, I again create scarcity because I don't use my whole salary for this, but only a part of it. And that way I don't spend more than I intend to. Step number 6 is automate. Now I know we're talking about a paycheck routine, which technically is something that you do every time you get paid. But the truth is, the less action you have to take to let your money grow and to also allocate your money to your fun account, the better for us, because each decision we have to make takes energy. And I think the main reason why so many people fail to build the wealth they would actually like to have is because they don't build systems. And you build a system by automating everything. For example, the employer match. This is a thing that you only take care of once, and after that, it pretty much runs on autopilot. For the after-tax accounts, it's the same. For example, you could take the maximum amount per year, then divide that number by 12, and then you just make a recurring transfer from your checking account to that after-tax investment account. Let's say, for example, it's $8,000 per year divided by 12. It is $667. And then you also make a recurring order so that it actually gets invested. And here again, it's work done once, and after that, it runs on autopilot. Isn't that great? I did the same thing with the fun account. Automated transfer every month. And then when I go out shopping, I just check that account, look how much is in there, so that I know how much I can spend. And when you automate everything, the only thing that you need to keep doing on a regular basis, like when getting paid, is also step number 7, it's refine. This is, for example, look into your high yield savings account and check if your emergency fund is filled up. And then you only need to change the transfer to the next account. This can be to look for savings potential. So to go through your single expenses and see if you can, for example, cancel an unused subscription or find cheaper contracts. And then each time you found something that you can save, you instead put that to your savings rate immediately, because there are actually 2 types of saving. If you want to learn more about that, I recommend this video next. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.